Good morning. Amanda, what reading room is that behind you?
I have no idea, but I find it lovely.
It is. All right, we'll have to go and explore who's
Good morning, Alan. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Jim. It's been a little while.
It has been, and if I may take 30 seconds of indulgence, I changed jobs from the Linux Foundation, and in doing so, lost track of my healthcare SBOM POC working group calendar invites and stuff. Is that still ongoing?
It is, and
Okay.
forgive me for taking some of the airtime, but it is kind of relevant. So for anyone who's not aware, there's been an ongoing collaboration between medical device manufacturers and large American hospitals about generating and sharing SBOMs. And they are, now that the FDA rule is coming into full force, they are busy trying to figure out, should we take a victory lap and shut down? Always nice when ad hoc government things say we're done, or should we continue? So if you paste your email in the chat, I will forward you that invite.
Very kind. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that, taking the moment. And to add to Alan's comments, we've been at it since what, 2018, I think.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing this morning?
Good morning, Jonathan.
Morning, John. Sounds like a missed Alan's update already.
Yeah, I've got other SBOM announcements to make to this group, so we can keep going.
All right, look forward to it. Very cool. Right, we've got a lot of people on the call already. Very good. So we've got a packed agenda. If people can update the meeting notes, I would appreciate it. And if we jump down to the agenda, first things first, as always, we look for any new friends on the group that want to say hello. And there's quite a few people coming in, but I think also a chunk of people are on holiday at the moment. So any new friends that want to say hello?
Yeah, I will.
Everyone's got their hands up. Okay, just go for it, Josh.
So my name is Joshua Luck. I'm not new to the OpenSSF, but I am new to the end user working group. I've been working in open source software supply chain for a long time, and recently joined Verizon. So I'm looking to get more acquainted with this group and understand and hopefully collaborate to and contribute with folks in this group with an end user focus.
Thanks, Josh. Next up, Mihai.
Hello, I'm Mihai from Google Open Source Security team. Not new to OpenSSF, but new to this meeting. Again, supply chain.
Hello and welcome. And Brandon, do you want to go next? Brandon?
Yeah, hi. So it's me. Hi, I'm part of the Google Open Source Security team working on Guac. Not new to OpenSSF as well, but new to this group. So, hi everyone.
Ganja, do you want to go next?
Hi, I'm from Morgan Stanley. My manager Declan used to attend many of these OpenSSF meetings, so I'm coming in as a stand-in, but I would continue in this specific group.
Excellent, welcome. Thank you very much. And Dr. Amanda Martin.
Yeah, I'm Amanda. I'm the new Director of Program Management at the Linux Foundation for OpenSSF. And so I'm here to see if you guys need any program management support from the Linux Foundation.
Sure we will, thank you. Sunny.
Hi everyone, Sunny Yippee. I'm part of the Kusari team working on Guac. My first meeting here. Thanks everyone.
Welcome to the group, Sunny. And Parth, it's been a while.
Hey everybody, this is Parth, also part of the Kusari team working on Guac. Glad to be here.
Very cool. Okay, thank you. So good to see a lot of new faces. Welcome to the group. first thing, or the next thing rather, is to see if we can nominate a scribe. Anyone available to take up scribe duties today?
Do it for the first 30 minutes and then I have to jump. So I'll start the ball rolling to say I will take notes for first half of the meeting if someone else can take for the second half.
Massively appreciated, Alan. Thank you very much. Dan, our usual scribe, is unfortunately away on vacation today, as well with a couple of others. So thank you very much. Right, first order agenda. Oh, Sonny, you got a hand up, or is that still from before?
That was still from before. Sorry.
All right. So first thing on the agenda is membership update. So Andrew, do you want to give a quick update?
Yeah, good morning, good evening, everyone. I'm glad to see a couple new members who joined today. And for all of those of you who have access to Slack, I put a spreadsheet in the bar at the top. It lists some of the targets where we have actually actions going on. So for example, Mercedes is going to join us hopefully next week. They've committed to, so should Boeing. And then below that, we've got a target list where we don't have contacts. And so if you, as Jonathan had pointed out, there are some new members to the Linux Foundation. Was it to Linux Foundation or OpenSSF you're pointing out, John?
I think it
Such
was
as Lockheed and, yeah.
I think it was OpenSSF, Andrew, but.
Okay, so we should, these are clearly some good end users we need to reach out to. So if we can get some contact names from them, then I'm happy to pursue it. And if any of you have contacts or suggestions for other end users that we should be reaching out to, Jim, thank you for providing the contact and information to the New York Presbyterian Hospital. They're doing some really, really cool stuff around open source. And I think they said that they would also join next week. So thanks for making that contact and connection. That's really helpful. But we want to continue to get some more folks in other highly regulated industries. Another healthcare provider would be good. So again, if any of you have suggestions, please add them to the spreadsheet or reach out directly yourselves, whatever you prefer. But we're getting a good group here and a good pipeline.
One question, Andrew, this spreadsheet, should that only incorporate like new targeted members or like all of us?
That I was going to add another spreadsheet to it with all of us because we're getting so large and I don't think we have that master list. So I'll add another tab, which will be existing members, and then we can all populate that.
Thank
you. And I think, Jim, you've got your hand raised there.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to add on the significance of New York Presbyterian. Some of you may have seen or are familiar with the fact that they contributed Daggerboard as an open source SBOM management tool, which they're playing around with within New York Presbyterian and has benefits both within the healthcare sector and outside as well. So it'll be interesting to see where they're going. I've been kind of trying to press Jay into actually establishing a real live first time healthcare OSPO. So we'll see if this group can kind of push him over the edge. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Jim. Yeah, there are a couple of people and a couple of groups on the edge where we're talking to, and they're talking about joining. I think there's Noah from Spotify, who is coming back from maternity, and a couple of others from ADP and other groups. So hopefully we'll see more people joining in shortly. So Andrew, thanks for your work on that. I think it's starting to pay off. Great stuff.
And now, again, to George's point, I'll add another tab. I'll send out a notice to this on the Slack channel, and if you can add yourself, your name, title, contact, role, so on, just the basics.
Very cool. Thank you. All right. Next item on the list is Mike and team to give us a bit of an update on Guac.
Sure. And how much time you think, because I know there's a packed agenda here and I can go as long or as short as folks need. So
I think probably sort of 15 minutes. We'll see how it goes.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So I'll go quick here.
Don't be a bit
Sure, just
long. Here we go. Yep.
Yep. Give me 1 second to. Oops. Hold on. I think it just crashed for me. 1 second. Let me refresh the page. There we go. Okay, so Guac, it's an open source project that's a collaboration between Google, Kusari, Purdue, and Purdue University, and we got a lot of our sort of use cases in collaboration from City. And so let me just first talk about the problem and go through that really quick, right? So here, our software supply chains are complicated, and even just a very simple software supply chain that loads in a few hundred packages that you're using, you're actually obviously using tens of thousands of packages. And in this image you see here, there's literally tens of thousands of packages in there that you're actually including, you're via transitive or somehow impacted by, right? And each one of those packages is potentially, it's an asteroid, right? Like most of these packages are benign. They do what they say they do on their tin, and that's it, right? Some of them, they have vulnerabilities, and even though they are, some of them will pass by, close by, but miss you. Some of them might hit you, but mostly burn up in the atmosphere and cause very little damage. But where are the ones that you're super worried about, right? Like which ones should you be super worried about? Which ones are huge, will have huge impact and be on crash course with you? And so that's what we're trying to figure out, right? And so why is this so complicated? Why is this such a big problem? Well, we have both too much data and too little data, right? We have SBOMs, VEX, Salsa, various other pieces of metadata, CVEs, all this sort of stuff. Also, overall, the data quality on a lot of this is quite bad, right? Like, as you've seen folks from like SBOM benchmark or SBOM scorecard, we're seeing that like largely right now, at least, a lot of the SBOM quality isn't very good. And so we don't know what's actually out there, and we don't know where those gaps are, right? So we want to kind of point a telescope at our supply chain, start to look out there and see what are the things that we should be worried about, what are the things we actually have information on, and that we can kind of build relationships to better understand whether or not we are about to be impacted. And then, we're also looking at, what are the areas we don't have enough information to actually make a call, and that's worrying. And so then let's talk about what's actually needed here, right? So as end users, right, and as somebody who was up until recently mostly in the end user space, right, we need tools that stay out of the developer's way, but provides them feedback when they need it, right? We don't want a developer to look at that big set of packages and say, you need to worry about that, right? We want to just tell them, hey, this is how this particular issue in your supply chain impacts you, and here's how you should probably solve it. We also need to make sure that whatever this is easy to manage, configure, and operate. We all have way too many tools, way too many systems that we need to sort of manage and operate. We need also consistent enforcement of policy against the STLC, right? We don't want to have tools that apply completely different rules and a completely different rule engine for your sort of your open source ingestion as you do for managing that same sort of open source risk when you start to go into the build, right? And we believe this isn't possible without a data store for your supply chain security metadata. All right. And so this is what the picture looks like, right? So you want to start to be able to put the pieces together, and over here on the right hand side you have some packages, you have various dependencies, and eventually that sort of dependencies sort of blows up into this thing of here's all the files that are used in a build. In this case, we pulled this information from Salsa, and this is actually Kubernetes. And so you think, you might think, hey, this is what I'm worried about, and these are the things, but then actually there's all this other information that's out there. And so now, let me go and just show you what the goal here is, and like what this should look like to the actual developer who is looking at this with hands on keyboard. 1 second. Okay. Second here. Share my screen. Great. All right, now you should see, oh, oops, here, let me just do that. All right, close that for a second. Right, so, you have a Docker file, and really what a developer wants is a developer just wants to have, they want to be able to just say, hey, I'm using a Docker file, I'm running a pip requirements, whatever. They want to just say, okay, great. Here's the red squiggly. We queried your data engine, we applied it to policy, and we said, this, there's something wrong here, right? In this case, it's a little bit canned, but the idea here is this queries information in Guac. It's found to be, not in policy, and so it provides some information there for folks to sort of operate on, right? And so this is what the developer wants. The developer doesn't want to say, okay, well, I'm told that some package in somewhere in my project is bad, and I need to figure it out, right? They want to be just told, hey, this package doesn't meet policy, whether it's regulatory compliance, whether it's, hey, there's a vulnerability, and we are pretty sure you are impacted by that vulnerability, or some other mechanism, right? And so how does then like the organization, the security engineers get to that, right? How do they kind of figure out what that thing should be, and then how do they explore that? That's kind of a bit more where some of this other stuff comes in. And let me show you something that is still being worked on from the UI perspective, but in this image, or not image, it's interactive here. In this supply chain graph, this is information that's coming from Guac. And so just as a reminder, Guac is a supply chain graph. And inside of here, right, we have a bunch of different packages. And this is just the Python packages. If I included everything, it would be hundreds of thousands. But I can go and look at stuff like, actually, let me go and look at celery, right? And I can zoom in specifically here. And obviously there'd be a lot more knobs and things for folks once we get there. But you can start to see here, I can click on this, and right, so that's the information you might have from an SBOM. But as you start to pull out and you start to look at information coming from deps.dev, from CVE streams, from OSV, and so on, I can start to bubble this up, blow this up a little bit. And you can start to see, hey, there's a PySec vulnerability associated with this version of a thing. There is this there's this GHSA alert. And we can start to, continue to like look at, are there ones that, hey, this version of this thing also has that same vulnerability, and so on. And you can, begin to also look at stuff like, I don't think this one is included in any of our images, but you could start to look at stuff like, hey, is this particular, oh, actually, I guess maybe there is. So we could see here that actually, if I pull this up a little bit more, I'm sorry. You can see here, there is like, this is used inside of a container. Which one, right? So if I click on that, and well, so you can see here, this is included in the index.docker.io/library image, right? And so once again, this is not what an end user would see and largely, and whatnot, but this is sort of what security engineers are trying to sort out. And okay, cool. So like, this is what's out there. And they think, when you first look at the problem, you only see this small little set of things, but this is really what's out there. And so then how do we kind of get there? How do, what sorts of things would a security engineer and developers do? Well, this is all a GraphQL API, and we have a bunch of tools that can interact with it, you know, to help out with actually running the queries and running automation to kind of hit some of the key things like, hey, from this package, can you find me all vulnerabilities, whether they are direct or transitive from this package that are in the dependency chain? But let's kind of like just sort of look here, right? If I wanted to, you know, just say, hey, fetch me all packages, I can run this. Takes a few seconds because there's hundreds of thousands of packages in there. But while that's running, let me. Hold on here. Okay. Oh, geez. Might have just. Sorry, this is running my laptop, so it's might be a bit intense. Here, let me just. Okay, it died. Okay, so let me run a different one here and just say type. So if I want to just get all Python packages, I can run this, and you can see here. Here's all the Python packages. If I wanted to fetch information about, for example, salsa, right? Hey, find me, you know, here, you know, find me this builder, right? Is in this case, it's the Kubernetes salsa builder. And if I wanted to go in and say, hey, find me all things that are connected to that salsa builder, we can do that as well. And you can see here's all the various salsa attestations associated with that builder. So for example, if you come in and say, hey, that builder was turned out to be malicious, great. We can now start to invalidate and certify bad across all of those things. Cool. So now,
Michael, would you mind if we pause at sort of 25?
Sure. Yeah.
A second, just so I can get, because I appreciate Alan mentioned that you're going to drop at past, and then we continue afterwards. Don't want to.
Yeah. That's fine.
So keep going, mate.
Yep. Okay, so let me just quickly here. Okay, so just kind of going back to the architecture here quickly, right? Ideally, what you want is you want to have all of that information loaded into a knowledge graph, right? Your CVEs, your SBOMs, et cetera, that can then feed back into the rest of your SDLC, whether it's a Sterling toolchain or whatever else, right? Where you have, you know, you want to make sure like I'm basing my ingestion off of the same information that I'm basing my secure dev on, that I'm basing my secure build on, that I'm basing when I go to actually do binary authorization, right? You don't want to say, well, I'm looking at this SBOM in this case, I'm looking at this CVE and, you know, stream in this case. You want to have all of that data in one place that can then be used by policy to then sort of figure all of that out, right? And then quickly, you know, really, when you start to look at the depth, then you have stuff like the trust foundation, right? SigStore, right, is at the base, and stuff like SigStore where you're doing your signing, you're establishing identities. Then you want to have signed identities. This is stuff like signing SBOMs, salsa attestations, and those sorts of things. Then you want to make sure that, okay, well, now that I have all this data, I want to perform analysis on this. I want to find, you know, I want to synthesize that data into actionable things, right? And then finally, you want to have policy at the top that looks at all of that synthesis and then is able to make decisions based on the environment, based on regulatory compliance and all those sorts of rules. And I'll stop there.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. So we can come back from maybe Q&A if that's okay, just after we get an update from Alan. And sorry to put this thing in different order, but I think needs must at the minute. Alan, you.
Sorry, and thank you, Jonathan. This is interesting. I want to learn more about Guac. Especially happy to see multiple different organizations involved in it. But so very briefly, some things that this group might be interested in. The CISA SBOM work has been banging its head for a while on what does SBOM mean for cloud? And obviously for developers, there shouldn't be a difference, right? You write software, you should know what the heck's in your software. But from a customer perspective, what does that mean? There's some work happening that's trying to sort of say, from a customer perspective, why is SaaS different from on-prem? Would love some thoughts on that. I'll paste a link. There's a sort of, after a lot of spinning, they're sort of focusing on that. So I will share a link to that rough document. The other thing that I want to flag that also might be relevant from the folks who use data and use SBOM data is we're now starting to acknowledge that an SBOM is not an SBOM is not an SBOM. And tools that generate data at different parts of the life cycle are important for and different. And so one of the next steps is to be able to describe the SBOM data in a scalable, vendor neutral, tool neutral way so that people can understand what they're getting, what they're asking for, et cetera. We have in both groups, we have the vendors, we have the people who want to sell you things, and we have the tool providers in the tooling group. For folks who say, I want to use SBOM data, this is your chance to actually weigh in and also smack around some vendors. So I will post links to those in the chat. And anyone who wants to know more, I'll put my email in the chat as well.
Excellent. That sounds particularly interesting, the SBOM quality stuff. Looking forward to that. Thanks, Alan. So yeah, if you can drop the chat links in, we'll add them back into the transcript. Thank you.
And Alan, I don't know if you've been, or you or someone else from CISA has been involved in the OSCAL effort, but my thought for some time is how to marry up the SBOM outputs into OSCAL-related control activities.
Yes, so for those of you who are not familiar, OSCAL, very big, sort of national security oriented, right? Heavy on the gov side of things for tooling. And there have definitely been some overlap on that side of things, but essentially trying to build very large frameworks that allow you to integrate your different security tools from an organization's perspective.
Yeah, with a primary emphasis around FedRAMP and US FISMA security compliance. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for letting me interrupt.
No worries. So if we can just segue back to the GWOC conversation for a second. So to Michael, thanks for the demonstration. Are there any questions from the group? But also, Michael, is there any sort of feedback or contributions you'd like from us?
Sure. Yeah, I think, and I shared in the Slack and I'll share it here as well. The GWOC the GitHub page, but yeah, if folks are interested, yeah, we're definitely interested in more community sort of engagement. So from the end user space, hey, what feedback do folks have? What sorts of, I think the big things are what sorts of use cases do folks have, and generally, like, what do folks want to see as that end state, right? As I showed originally, right? Like, I think, as being a developer and whatnot, as a developer, I just want to be able to say, oh, I get the red squiggly. The red squiggly tells me to update to this library. I do that and I move on with my day, as opposed to dealing with spreadsheets filled with tons and tons of things I'm supposed to sort through and figure out myself. And so, and the same thing also goes with stuff like ingestion, right? What are folks doing when it comes to, we'd love to hear more about, like, what are folks using to deal with sort of open source ingestion, and how are you saying, like, hey, yep, this matches my company policy for ingestion because it has this data from the SBOM, this data regarding, CVE streams and those sorts of things. And then as well as like anything else from like, CISOs or whomever, who are stakeholders who are, what they're probably concerned about is more around, is my software compliant with regulations, and is the company going to get pwned anytime soon, right? I think what sorts of things do folks want to see there, and we want to see where we can help out.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions from anyone in the group? Jim, you've got your hand up, but I think that might be from before.
It was, I'm sorry, let me take it down as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'd like to add also that, I think a lot of the utilities that we saw kind of just building on top of that, and those are things that it's all based on the GraphQL API. So it's not, everything's available by the API, and it's really easy to spin up new things. So it's nothing's like tied to the particular representation or the UI that we have.
Very cool. Thank you very much. Certainly interesting work going on, and I've seen it a little bit earlier on. So good stuff. Thank you, and thanks for presenting. Okay. Next item on the agenda, Pierre Giorgio, around taxonomy. Pierre Giorgio.
Yeah. Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So yeah, I wanted to quickly bring back the topic of the taxonomy to the discussion of the group. Just as a background, about 1 month ago, I was reached out by David Wheeler. He said that he really appreciated it, he really liked the work, and really thought that it's a good idea to push in the OpenSSF the adoption for this, and to discuss, of course, this in different working groups. And then, of course, I already told him that we already discussed this item in the end user working group, and we proposed it to the TAC. He was also suggesting to check with the best practices working group and integrity working group, because he sees that probably could be of interest of different working groups. So I wanted to discuss with you, what would you think would be the following steps, how we can push forward this item, how can I be helpful for that? We also discussed the topic of licensing. Everything should be fine, because we should have both for the repository a license that should be easily transferable below the OpenSSF. And also, I think with the paper, we could think about extracting only the part of the taxonomy and relicense below the OpenSSF. But maybe this could be a further item for discussion.
Well, I think one of the other ones was reaching out to others in other groups, such as the CNCF, and then we'd reached out to Andy Martin in the tax security, and Justin Kapos as well, right? So there's connections over into the CNCF as well, to get additional input.
Great.
I mean, I mean, anyone else want to add in? But my view was that I think this is an important initiative. I think it's a start. I think a lot of people are welcome and interested in adding more input into it, and I know that other people have got other ideas as well. Gathering
So this would likely be interested in the supply chain working group or the CNCF tax security, right?
Yeah, we reached out to Andy and Justin Kapos on the tax security side. I don't think it's actually been presented in the tax security working group itself, though.
Okay, so we have two meetings that will be relevant. One is a weekly meeting, which is a general tag, and then this one is supply chain specific, which you think is a better target audience.
I mean, Brandon, yeah, when I think we talked to Andy before, there was some initial discussions, but nothing particularly formal. Is that progressed since then around taxonomy within CNCF groups?
No, I don't think we've discussed this yet. So I guess let me talk to Andy, see where we are with that. I guess. Okay, yeah, let me sync up with him then.
But worth a presentation anyway, just to make people aware of it.
I was offering to just schedule one right now, but, but I'll talk to Andy.
Sounds great to me. Jay, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. So I've been walking, Pierre Giorgio, I've been walking your paper around to different working groups and in different SIG meetings all over the place because I've been, taking the efforts that started here and pitching, taxonomy work across the board. So, I mean, it's good that we're doing this. Conversations are being had, and I'm working on a bit of a proposal as well. I'm just trying to make sure, well, one, we need a fully formed TAC, and then two, making sure that we're helping and not hurting efforts by trying to propose something without finishing or starting in other places. I know that the end users work. I know here we're working on a taxonomy, a proposal, getting that pushed through as well. So I wanted to make sure that the efforts are not in vain. But those conversations are being had, and any chance I get, when I talk about taxonomy, I bring up that work, and I bring up the work being done here. So I mean, the other communities as well getting involved is a great thing. I just think that we let's make sure that we're settling on a place to do the work, and then pitch the work being done out rather than continuing to just, I don't know. I think our initiative here is good. I think what we have thinking about on a grander scale across OpenSSF is good. I think reaching out to other communities is good, but we should have something to reach out with. So that's my 2 cents.
So I think we had a proposal that was sent to the TAC, and we have the taxonomy itself that people have been adding to. I think Jay, and I think there's sort of more to go there as well, right? I think in terms of moving things forward, I don't know if there's any other thoughts. Krob, I know you're on the line. Any?
Yeah, I would be glad to have Pierre Giorgio come talk to the best practices working group. And also I think the vulnerability disclosures working group, I think that'd be interesting for them. As Jay alluded to, I think this is important work, and I think it deserves to live in a dedicated place within the foundation, something around a general kind of architecture, kind of a centralized facility that deals with not only this taxonomy, but other terms and lexicons we use across the foundation, personas, any kind of these universal things across the foundation, I think should live in some centralized place. And a couple of us are suggesting that the foundation create that. We'll see if the new TAC agrees, but yeah, I would welcome you to come talk to both of the working groups I'm interact with. I think it would be useful and interesting for us to discuss more. And I have done personal presentations where I've used the taxonomy to illustrate supply chain attacks. It's been very illustrative.
Thanks, for sure. I will be super glad to join. Perfect. Let's do it.
So I'm writing a list of different places to present it to, and I think that's really super beneficial. Krob, you're mentioning about different places to host these materials. Is this something that's being discussed at the TAC, or?
It has gone nowhere. I've suggested it to a couple people in the TAC. We are trying to put together a business case to suggest kind of a centralized facility that would encompass personas, taxonomies, lexicons, diagrams, that type of stuff. So we kind of, I would suggest we mush that into one working group, and that way it would be kind of across the whole foundation, as opposed to kind of living here in the end users working group, which this is a very important working group, but it's very focused and doesn't necessarily have the reach across the whole foundation. So I think elevating it to a part of a working group of its own, I think would get more traction and attention. So yeah, I'd be glad to work with anyone that wants to help us kind of further that proposal to get that put together. And anyone that wants to participate in the future, if it's accepted, that'd be awesome.
Sounds good to me. So I guess how to help is just give you a call and see if we can get together to agree on that place to put this data. Yeah. Very cool. So if I just double check there. So we have the tag security group, the CNCF security working group, the vulnerability working group, and the best practices working group as well. Yep. Got it. And then in addition to that, come together to look at the sort of universal hosting OSSF repository. Sounds good. All right. Very good. Any other comments and questions about the taxonomy? Or I think those are a couple of areas we can move that forward. No. All right. And I think as the tax sort of forms, maybe it's going to be easier to push this forward too, I think. Yep. All right. Next step is the architecture and threat model with Henrik, myself, and Abdullah. Abdullah is actually on vacation today, unfortunately. So Henrik, it's just you and I.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, do you want to say a few words, or shall I?
Do you want to go first, and I'll back you up?
All right. So, I mean, we have concluded basically the work on this large-scale architect or this architecture of this large-scale in-house development organization of a non-regulated company, right? So we said it is good enough to progress and proceed with threat modeling. Together with Jonathan and Abdullah, we came up with a couple of high-level assets, and so the next few steps will be really threat modeling those. The three of us have kind of a goal to have something presentable at the future FS-ISAC conference in a couple of weeks. Other than that, Abdullah was so kind to reach out to CROP and ask for a OpenSSF calendar item. I'm not sure whether there has been any anything sent around already. It's done. Yay. Great.
Look on the community calendar. The meeting is set up weekly, Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. UK.
Perfect. I didn't see this. When did you send this one? Right. That's about it from my side. Thank you.
Other additions to that is we've been really still struggling to find other small end users to add to those architectures or the threat model. So we're just, as Henrik says, forging ahead with the major one. Couple of bits of feedback that have been coming in about the level of granularity. And the reality is, whilst I think this is a high-level threat model, there are other threat models we can bring to bear around some more of the details, but we're trying to keep it fairly generic. And I think what we're really looking for is just additional contributors to join us to go through and threat model it, to get other people's viewpoints on it. You know, we've got JP Morgan, Citibank, and Endor Labs looking at it, but there's other end users that it'd be good to get people's view to make sure that when we're building up these threats, it makes sense. I think we've also had a couple of conversations about where to use the threat model and architecture. And this goes back to when we presented it to the TAC a couple of months ago now, with the view that as we build out a Sterling toolchain, or as we look at the different standards for supply chain, if we had an architecture up front and then we applied the threat model to it, we'd understand where the different emerging standards would fit, and also where any gaps would exist, so that then we could build out a Sterling toolchain and effectively use this material as an input or a requirements document of what as such into that work. So that's kind of why we're still doing it, just as a reminder for people. And that's why I think we get right. And then ultimately, I think place of hosting it would be CROB, your universal artifact repository.
Agreed. Again, this is important to all elements of the foundation, although it drastically affects end users and consumers. I think it deserves kind of that top level home so that it gets that attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. So as we figure out where that is, we'll appropriately contribute it. So really just looking for additional assistance to help with that work. We've got those meetings coming up, and we've done a number of ad hoc meetings, adding into that threat model. More people, the better. So all PRs welcome at this point. All right, next step of the meeting is updating for other working groups. So we've heard from CISA on some of the good working groups, as always, going on there. Anyone else want to bring any other working groups that they've attended? Any updates from them? We've got, tag security and supply chain CNCF members. Maybe that would help.
Sure. Can you repeat the question?
It's really any updates from any other working groups.
Oh,
the end user group. It's so many different great working groups that are around. We can't go to all of them, but it's useful. We sort of bring it back to the group.
yeah. I can provide a little bit of an update on both the supply chain integrity group here, as well as the supply chain group over in CNCF. So the group here we're working. So as you might have seen, SALSA 1.0 release candidate 2 is out. We are, I believe it's the 18th or 19th. 1.0 is planned to be released unless somebody comes in and says stop the presses. But the 1.0 should be going out soon. With that kind of coming out, I think we're looking to especially get some more input from end users on the tooling, right? Because we have a couple of tools out there, but as we kind of push to SALSA 1.0, we're looking for folks who, like, when it comes to end users, like, what are they looking to kind of get out of the tools when they sort of produce and consume SALSA, as well as anybody who might be building tools for that plan to interact with SALSA. We'd love to hear more about what folks are building. And associated with that is there's starting to be some whisperings of maybe spinning up a bit of a project that could provide guidelines for distributing supply chain metadata, right? Because folks don't want to, largely, the folks who are building these tools, as well as the folks who are consuming this data, don't want to have a million different ways to ingest the data, because Ruby gems decided to do it completely different than NPM, that decided to do it completely different from PyPI, and so on. If there's like a handful of things and a couple of outliers, that's probably fine. Otherwise, the tools in the space is going to be quite complicated. So that's one of the big things from the supply chain integrity thing stuff. And I know Jay, I think, has some updates regarding the S2C2F and some of the training stuff.
Yep. So S2C2F, as we approach SALSA 1.0, which is a wonderful accomplishment. I mean, so much work went into that, right? S2C2F, things are still pushing along with that, but because of the way we structured SALSA 1.0, and Mike had a really great blog he put out where he spoke about the different tracks, the different subsequent tracks that are coming up with SALSA, one of them being a potential dependency track, which is exciting, because if we take S2C2F and we do the right thing with it, that could be a catalyst for what the dependency track is to become, and those things can work hand in hand, furthering bridging S2C2F and SALSA. Now, what does that mean? That means that there's a lot more work that can be done, right? To date, right now we're working on an explanatory report, which is great, but also there's a new threat, and I was trying to do it real quick to find the issue, but if you go to the S2C2F GitHub repo and you go to issues, you'll see an issue in there where we've actually identified an additional threat that we're working on right now, trying to get the proper wording for. It might actually become two different threats that get put in to S2C2F. But these are things that this group specifically can come in, help with building wording around, help with making sure that how it's addressed in the document is sound. Ultimately, what this means is our efforts across the board with both SALSA and S2C2F can only complement one another as they increase and continuously improve and continuously evolve. So a lot of great work out of the supply chain integrity working group. That, in addition to our coming up, we're going to start meetings here to do a complete end-to-end supply chain integrity, secure supply chain integrity framework, right? Just from the working group perspective across the entire of the OpenSSF. And this is going to include all the stuff that we're working on, and additionally identifying gaps in all those works to create this one framework this one governing framework. So exciting stuff, man. I'm excited about it. I know Mike is too. So jump in. The water's warm.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay.
Cool.
And any
Oh, I was just gonna provide an update, sorry, on the other supply chain group as well. One other quick update, actually. So Fresca, which is part of the supply chain integrity group, definitely looking for additional contributors. It's kind of sort of been a little bit on frozen. It's a little bit on hold because a few folks have gotten reprioritized around different areas. But I think we're trying to figure out like what folks want to see out of Fresca. Is Fresca just a representative example? Do folks actually want to see it become a bigger tool, maybe as like a, potentially as a component that lives inside of a Sterling toolchain? Or do folks sort of view it as like, yeah, no, it's more or less done. Maybe it needs some maintenance as that representative example. So I'll post a document that I've written up, just sort of describing what Fresca is and that sort of thing. Before I continue, Rob? Oh, okay. The other thing regarding the supply chain working group within the CNCF, so we're working on, originally it was supposed to be sort of a real world policy white paper on supply chain policy in the cloud native space. But as time kind of went on, we recognized that one of the biggest challenges is not necessarily the real world policy, it's more of the executive summary that can then eventually lead to the real world policy. And so there's a bunch of work happening in that group. In fact, actually, right after this meeting is the weekly meeting that works on that. But there's some work that we're hoping, like maybe 5 pages that's just sort of describes at the executive level, like what are the things that executive stakeholders need to care about when it comes to cloud native supply chain security and where to start looking and what to start doing. And then that should hopefully lead into some of the other things that we're planning to release.
Great. And Crow, you got your hand raised?
Yeah, so some quick updates from other working groups. The BEST working group has officially adopted the memory safety SIG. You'll recall that memory safety was one of the elements of the mobilization plan. So that is now officially a SIG underneath the BEST working group, and they have a call later today. I think so. Anyone's interested in talking about converting older software into memory safe languages or using more memory safe techniques, join the fun. The vulnerability disclosures working group, we voted and officially adopted the OpenVex spec and the software. So we're working with legal on that IP transfer. And many of us have been very active with the CISA SBOM working group. So you will continue to help forward the VEX standard, and OpenVex is a simple implementation of that if anyone wants to use it. But the main reason we adopted this is to try to give the foundation and the community a voice in these large industry spanning issues. And this gives us a bridge into talking more officially with groups like CVE, CSAF, SBOM. So I'm very excited about the ongoing VEX work. And then we also have re-energized our engagement with OSV, which is a vulnerability documentation standard used by like GitHub advisories, for example. So you'll see much more energy and forward velocity around OSV out of the foundation. So look forward to that. And I think it could be useful to consumers. More information about vulnerabilities is better than less.
Very good. Thank you very much. Anything else? Any other updates from other working groups? It's a good list today. What's going on? Okay, so last agenda item is any other business. And if I can raise one, just as a bit of a reminder, we are closing in on Vancouver, right? We're only a couple of weeks away, and I think people are getting together and ready to participate in that. So just a bit of a reminder, if you haven't booked your travel, go and book it. I haven't either. But hopefully people are meeting up for a couple of beers when we're in Vancouver.
On that note, this group does have two presentations. Jeff Borick, I think you're on today. You're leading one of the panels, a panel presentation, and then Jonathan and I are presenting. I think let's get a little bit of a teaser out, and I'll make sure I put it in the Slack channel here. If the folks here could put it on their social media channels, get some publicity, raise the attendance and visibility, that'd be really helpful. And also, I know for Jonathan and I, Jeffrey and I and the others on the panel have done it a couple of times, so I think we're okay from a content perspective, but Jonathan, you and I should start putting something together for that. But again, I'll put some content in the Slack channel probably early next week, and if people can start helping to publicize it, that would be awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I did throw it out on Twitter just in the last 48 hours with you and my other esteemed colleagues on Twitter copy. Not that Twitter's the most popular platform these days.
Yeah, I don't use it anymore. I've switched to Mastodon myself.
All right, very good. Anyone else? Any other business?
I updated the spreadsheet. I add another tab for current members. If all of you could take 30 seconds and update yourself, that would be great.
One quick thing, not foundation related. I'm jumping over to a call at the first PCERT SIG. The CVSS v4 standard is very close to implementation and release. So look forward to all of your favorite vendors and security researchers using a new and better version of CVSS very soon. And I can bring back details in a future call once I hop over there.
That'd be good, actually. Thanks, Rob. Interesting stuff. All right, thank you very much. So a lot going on as usual, and we've got Vancouver coming up too. So thank you to all the presenters today. And we will close it out. Have a great weekend, and thanks for joining. Thank you.